All of this hurricane stuff recently had us thinking, why is it that these systems don't fire up in the Pacific and affect us here in the Northwest? Although I'm glad they don't. Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino, as always, has all the answers. What do you think, Matt?
Thanks so much, Pat. So first of all, hurricanes absolutely do fire up in the Pacific, just not our part of the Pacific, and I'll show you why in just a second. All has to do with really ocean temperatures. Hurricanes are warm core storms. Unlike our strong winter storms, which can bring hurricane force winds, those are cold core storms. They derive their energy from the dynamics of the upper atmosphere and from differences in temperatures. But hurricanes are not that. They derive their energy from the warm, moist air over the ocean. So you need a very warm ocean in order to get a hurricane or a tropical storm to form. So that's the first ingredient. You need converging air that's moving upwards, which is pretty common in the tropics when we've got all that heat down low. And you need a lot of moisture, which is also very common in the tropics, of course, high humidity there. And then the winds aloft, you either want it blowing from the same direction or you want very little wind aloft too. So those are the major ingredients you need for hurricane formation. So let's investigate the first one, the ocean temperatures. Look at the colors here. We're in the blues to the greens to the yellows, all the way down to the middle of Baja. That's not very warm water. We're talking 50, 60 degree temperature water. That is not warm enough to, let alone form a hurricane, to sustain a hurricane, even if it does form farther south off the coast of Mexico where the water is warm enough, and that's where they form quite frequently. In fact, little known fact, we get more hurricanes forming in the eastern Pacific than we do in the Atlantic in a typical year. They just move out to sea. That's another reason why we don't see them here. Now, they do happen. Back in 1997, there was one named Ignacio that came up Baja, canceled a baseball game in San Francisco, and brought us rain in the Northwest. That's really the most direct impact we've ever had from a tropical storm. It was no longer a tropical storm when it got here. What about the Columbus Day storm? We got some video of that. In fact, the 60th anniversary coming up in about 2 weeks of the Columbus Day storm, October 12, 1962. It was not a tropical storm or a hurricane, although it did derive its energy. It formed from the remains of a typhoon in the western Pacific. But again, it was not a tropical system when it did the damage here. Okay, back to the maps, and I'm going to show you the ocean temperatures over on the East Coast. Look at all the red here. It's in the 80s. In fact, it even gets in the 90s sometimes in parts of the Gulf of Mexico. And this warm water extends all the way across the Atlantic to the coast of Africa. So there's just way more source area for tropical storms to not only form, but to maintain their energy and strengthen over the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I'm going to show you another map here that shows hurricane climatology just for a particular week in August, late July and August actually, but it proves the point. If you look at the track, these are all the named storms, okay? Well, they all came from the east and moved west. So that's the general direction of the hurricanes. And here in the Northwest, that's not where our upper level winds are typically coming from. They are off the coast of Mexico. And in fact, that's the saving grace, Pat, because when those hurricanes do form off the coast of Mexico, they usually travel westward out over the open ocean and don't really bother anybody. We get them in the Pacific, just not our part of the Pacific.
Wow, super interesting as always. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. The Red Cross is already on the ground in Florida. If you'd like to donate to help their efforts, open the camera on your smartphone now and hover it over the QR code there on your screen. It will take you directly to their donation site. This will be a weeks-long or maybe months-long effort to clean up and recover, and we hope that you'll help out however you can.